Hi everyone, this is my video for the legal aspects of teacher evaluations. First of all, I read the articles and I'm just summarizing them real quick here. In the first article, it was just something from the National Education Association, kind of outlining how the Every Student Succeeds Act that was passed a few years back, how it addresses teacher evaluation. The main takeaways are that states no longer must make student test scores a significant portion of teacher evaluations, meaning that it gave a little bit more freedom to states in what they put into their teacher evaluations. It also allowed local teacher unions, or it allowed that any local teacher unions that could negotiate about evaluation could continue to do so if their local and state laws allow it. It didn't create that right for everybody, but it maintained it for those who already had it. But even if negotiations are not available, ESSA required that districts collaborate with various stakeholders, including teachers groups, on many topics, including evaluation. And so there's still an opportunity for teachers and teacher organizations to have a voice in the evaluation system that is being used with them. The one thing it did require is that states can design an evaluation program on their own, and it can include student growth measures, but does not have to. But it must include multiple measures, so it can't just be based off of student test scores and that's it. It can't be based off of just one observation and that's it. It has to be at least one measure, or excuse me, more than one measure of their teaching ability, or at least two different pieces of evidence related to their teaching performance. Article 2 was from Education Week. This was basically just a review of recent litigation. It actually was not completely up to date. I think the most recent was like 2015. It'd be interesting to see if some of those have progressed any further than were in the article. The main takeaway from the cases that have been completed is that cases rarely go in the favor of the teacher. In almost all cases, either the court dismissed the claim from the teacher, saying there was no basis for the litigation, or they ruled in favor of the state or the district in nearly every case. There might have been one or two where the teacher won, but almost every case was against them. Although this may change as laws have changed, ESSA has changed, state laws are constantly changing regarding this topic, and as more of these cases come to a close, we might find that that ratio changes a little bit. But ultimately, if you're a teacher who feel like you've had a slight against you regarding evaluation or due process, you're probably unlikely to win it, no matter what your standing. So. And then the last article was another one from Education Week, and this one just kind of reviewed the recent history of evaluation systems. Ultimately, new systems are more complex. They do take into account more factors, are far more nuanced, so a lot of them have rubrics instead of just a checklist of yes, no's. It's yes, you do this well, you're proficient, you're beyond proficient, you need improvement. There's more of a graded scale as opposed to a yes/no, which can be kind of limiting. Teacher unions have ultimately have fought the use of value-added measures, as kind of talked about in the NEA. Basically, we're not just going to base it off of, or they really push back against anything that puts too much weight on students learning for one teacher. Because we do know that there's so many factors that play a role in how much a student learns that it's really hard to, our systems just don't have the nuance to pull out the teacher influence on that student learning. And until we have that in place, it's really an unfair way to base an evaluation on. I think it can be a part of evidence, but to put too much weight on it is just faulty for many ways, or for many reasons. And then the last takeaway from this article is that the effectiveness of evaluation systems is still unclear. We're not really sure if by making these systems more complex? Are we actually improving the quality of teaching and the quality of learning that students are getting? Some of that is probably related to the wide range of systems that are out there and the different ways that they're measuring both academic performance but also teacher effectiveness. I'm sure it's really hard for researchers to find a common way to measure that, and so some of that lack of clarity is partly because of ineffective measures or ineffective methods for capturing that data. So it'll be interesting to see as we learn more about about student learning and about the teacher's role in that, how that might come into play with evaluation systems. As far as my own district, we used what's called the E4E. I don't remember what that actually stands for, but it's from Southwest Plains Education Service Center, and it's based off of the Danielson model. Breaks it up into a few different groups, and it's a rubric style. And all staff are evaluated on the same tool. That does have limitations. If you've watched any of my previous videos, I've talked about that. As a former school psychologist, having a teacher tool used to evaluate me was often unhelpful, and really it was more of the administrator's feedback that supported my progress more than the actual information from the evaluation tool. In our district, we do have each new teacher has, or new staff member has 2 evaluations their first 2 years with the district. Then they have 1 evaluation their 3rd year, and then 1 evaluation every 3 years after that. So if you've been here 9 years, then you're only getting that evaluation every 3rd year, and it's only once a year at that point. If teachers, or on each evaluation, teachers have the opportunity to comment. Do they agree with? Do they disagree with? What other things do they have to add to that evaluation? Do they want to document something that that the evaluator didn't include? If they do not agree with their evaluation, teachers can appeal, and a further review might be granted, but it's not a guarantee. And ultimately, if teachers are being let go because of the changes in due process in our state, teachers aren't guaranteed a hearing. And so the school board might allow for it, but there's no guarantee that it would happen. The legal case I pulled out actually wasn't a teacher versus a district, but several teacher groups versus the state of Texas. And just because I found that one to be really interesting about, basically the state of Texas was wanting to evaluate all staff members on student performance on the state assessment. It was putting as much as or at least 20% of the evaluation system was based on this value-added measure, and several organizations pushed back against that, saying that it was impossible to, with the system they were using, it was impossible to tell how much of an influence, how much value was actually added by any one educator. And so they pushed back on that, and they came to a settlement, basically removing that provision. I included a link here. Because it ended up being a settlement, I wasn't able to find a case law, so-and-so versus Texas Education Agency, but I did include the link there for people to respond or to check that out. And then ultimately, I feel like it's going to be very important for me to keep up with this. Even looking back 2011, 2014, the laws and the way they're interpreted are changing quite a bit. It's going to be really important for me to stay up on what current laws have been passed, but also how those laws are being interpreted. So I've got 2 ways that I plan on doing this. I did this as a school psychologist to keep up with special ed law and due process in that regard. So I feel like I'll just use a similar process. Mainly I'll monitor state legislation related to the topic, in this case evaluation and due process. I guess federal law really doesn't touch on this as much. It's more limiting the power of the federal government more than in this topic, more than dictating what should happen. So I really feel like paying attention to state legislation would be most important, but also my negotiations within the local area, that would probably be on here as well. And then also reviewing literature from education publications. I'm hoping through those avenues I would expect them to publish cases that have a large precedent or might be a change in how we are typically doing things. So I think following that literature will be a key ways. And then, I guess I didn't put it on here, but ultimately talking to other people and what they've learned, what their experiences, that's going to be a big part of this as well. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening with me. I am finding this class to be very interesting as I learn more about the evaluation processes and the laws that govern it. I look forward to learning with you all, and have a great day.